I had been recruited from a company out of Texas. I lived in Chicago at the time, and they had asked me if I'd be willing to relocate to Jacksonville, Florida, because there was a big sewer rehabilitation project there. And mind you, the company I was being recruited by did about $8.5 million a year in revenue. And the son of the family that started this was close to my age, and he from Tennessee, and said, "John boy, I want you to go down to Jacksonville and see if we can get this whole $900 million of work." I said, "Really?" He said, "That's your job." So I moved, and they had a big program manager, big engineering firm, multinational, Black and Veatch, that was over the project. And once I saw that number and heard the number and got into what it was,
the 900 million,
you couldn't stop. You had to, everything I did was trying to figure out how to get there. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s. So I built my ambition plan. And I started to ask questions differently than any of my competitors were doing. And I think the program was actually bigger than that. But long story short, within 24 months, I was successful in getting the company I worked for a 5-year, essentially sole source project for $450 million. The company I worked for had to joint venture with another business because they couldn't handle all the work. They were a little bit shocked that we pulled this off. And that took the $8.5 million a year company in 24 months to 60 or 70 million a year. They and their joint venture partner were acquired. And another valuable lesson, I thought I knew more than everybody else. So I went and started my own business because I didn't want to work for the parties that acquired the business I worked for. And it was I think at the time, the single largest contract ever awarded in the United States for this type of sewer rehabilitation.
Well, you think about it, right? So 900 million takes you down a path of having to think differently than you would if you were chasing, say, $1 million worth of work or $2 million worth of work. You had to have a different type of strategy. You had to be asking different types of questions. You had to be thinking differently about the people that you met. How does sort of those things all kind of come together and shape in your mind?
Yeah, it was interesting because in what we're coaching and teaching now, you have this enterprise sales level where you're high, wide, and deep in an organization. Well, I had to do that. It wasn't formalized, but I knew that I had to be high, wide, and deep in this organization. And the beautiful thing about it is the middle managers started to understand what this could do for their lives, the outcomes it would deliver, the problems it would solve for them. They started to tell me who needed to be involved, who I had to touch, and how I had to touch them. So they gave me the roadmap because they saw the value in what it was I was bringing to the table. I wasn't selling. I was only asking questions. And I think, again, that's why when I hear you and Mike, particularly on some of your old podcasts, and you guys are talking about this, and then Mike writes a book on it, holy cow, it's what I did. I just didn't know it at the time. It works.